You were doing the scratch vocals, if you know what I mean.
Right. Which I sure wish I could get a copy of somehow. I don't even know how to do it. I sure would like to have some of that just for a souvenir. But anyway, and I remember then, I was sitting there watching Rick then put on his vocal, and I was sitting there on a couch in a control booth, and Rick came in and he walks over. And he goes, "Well, what do you think? Do you think it was rocking enough?" And I said, "Yeah, this is a lot more rocking than the other." Again, it's a little thing, but when you have a guy that since the time you were 4 years old, he was your influence, he was your idol, and here you are, and he comes up to you and he asks you your opinion, before he went to Jimmy Haskell. Now, not that my opinion would have mattered over Jimmy Haskell or anything. I'm not insinuating that at all. I'm sure my opinion might have probably not meant anything, but it's just the idea that that's the way he was. That he would come over to me, and the nice part of it is that maybe he thought, well, Ronnie does this kind of music, and this is the same kind of thing. He's somebody that knows what this kind of music should sound like, and so little things like that made me feel good. And I think it kind of shows the kind of person he was. I remember he was playing a place out here that is a real small place, and I won't say the name of it, but he was playing there, and a couple of people were telling me the story. After a show, he was backstage, and he saw that Ray Charles was going to be there, like in another week or so. And Rick said, "God, now why would Ray Charles be playing in a place like this?" And people, thinking like, well, you're at least as famous as Ray Charles, maybe even more so. Why are you playing in a place like? But Rick always looked at it like he wasn't that big of a deal. That he always looked up to other people, even looking up to people who didn't have the success that he had. I mean, face it, as great, as legendary, as influential as some of his idols were, they didn't sell as many records as he did.
Oh, sure. Carl, who was, I guess, what Rick is to us.
Right.
So had one top 40 hit, and that was Blue Suede Shoes.
Yeah.
But there again, it's who influences and who comes out to you.
Right.
Well, give me your sense of what kind of person Rick was.
I think that he's the most unpretentious person that you could ever meet in the world. He was totally himself. He never tried to be anything else. I think that he cared about other people. I think that he enjoyed signing autographs. I think that he felt that he owed it to people. He always smiled. He always gave girls a kiss. And he was always polite. He was always shy. He was always quiet. He had the attitude. Another thing you have to give him credit for, down through the years during interviews, he would just say something like, "I'm lucky." He goes, very few people are so fortunate as to have parents, that are big stars and have a show. He said, he goes, "I could be working at a gas station." He goes, all this has happened mainly because I was lucky to be born into this family. And it's not to say that take anything away from Rick's talent or anything, but just the fact that he himself would say that, just shows kind of how humble he was, that he would go out publicly and say, even if it's not totally true, that I'm where I am. Part of the reason that I'm where I am is because I lucked into a situation here where my parents had a weekly television show for me to be on,
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty humble of him to feel that way.
Let's talk about Rick Nelson, the family man. Okay, I mean, let me play the cynic. Okay, what people would say is, yeah, we see Ozzy and Harriet and Ricky and David and Chris and June and all those wonderful people on this television show, and they're all nice to each other and they all love each other and all the rest, and that's gotta be bogus. That's gotta be a front. What sense did you have about Rick as a family man?
I think that it basically was, not being close to the situation at all. I can't give the total ins and outs at all. It's impossible. But from my being around him and from knowing people who are around him constantly, or my being around people who are around him constantly, he's basically every time he'd be around them, it was like watching Ozzy and Harriet. That's just the way he was, and everybody, from me to people who know him, would say, well, maybe he'd do this or that once in a while. He smoked cigarettes or something, which a lot of people don't know about. Or he wouldn't do that in public, but he did really protect his image, and I don't think there was a lot to protect. I think that he basically was always that way. And in fact, now I'm going to sit on that special tribute TV program. When I first met him, he's a little shy, quiet kid, and when I saw him again last summer, he was the same exact way.
Yeah.
And he really was. And when you dig down deeper into his personal life, I don't know. And I don't think it matters. I don't think if there's some dirt to dig up at all, from the tabloids and in the supermarket stands or whatever, that I don't think that it matters, because he always gave the best example, always, from day one right to the day he died. He never gave a bad example for young people or anybody. And I think one of the things that you can always attribute to Rick, too, is that he made rock and roll acceptable to parents and stuff because of his image. His image being this nice, wholesome boy next door. When people were saying it was a product, rock and roll was a product of the devil and burning Elvis records or whatever, he made it more acceptable and something for parents to not feel so threatened by and stuff. And it was always that way. And how many people I would hear say, after they'd meet him, God, he's just like Ozzy and Harriet,
Yeah. I want to talk musically about, it's wonderful that you anticipate or answer some questions that I was going to ask you, and one of them was, did Rick help smuggle it in to the living rooms, as he's really been attributed as the man who did that. But I want to talk about his music, and I want to talk about first, I called it savvy. Jimmy Haskell referred to it as taste. And that was that Rick, when he started out at least, was not a musician. And other people said Rick was never a musician in the sense of he didn't have knowledge of musical theory or anything else, but he seemed to possess the inner taste, the inner savvy that I call it, to know just what was right. Would you comment on that?
Well, the first thing is that Rick was a musician before he ever became a rock and roll star. Rick was a drummer. And as a matter of fact, the very first Ozzy and Harriet show that he sang on ever, in which he sang "I'm Walking," was called Ricky the Drummer. It was the title, like the subtitle of the show. And Rick was playing drums on the show, and he had played drums on previous shows before that, when he was about 15 or so. And, he and Dave both played a few instruments, several instruments. Rick played saxophone, which he played on some of his records. If you, on any of the real early stuff, he had a single called "I Got My Eyes on You." Mm-hmm. He played a sax solo on that. There was a song called, I think, "Right by My Side."
Sure.
That I think he played the sax solo on that. And he played sax on a few of the Ozzy and Harriet shows. So Rick was a musician, and he was a musician, before he started singing even. And, of course, his father must have played at least a half a dozen instruments. So, he did have, learn at least the basic things on some instruments. Mm-hmm. So, where were we from that?
I was talking about that inherent taste, or savvy, as I called it, that Rick had about, maybe he didn't know theory and composition and all the rest in the textbook sense, but he seemed to know exactly what was right. Now, he
knew what he wanted.
Rick's style was a very laid-back, very unexcited style that was so, and Jimmy called it this. He said it was tasteful. Right. It was a tasteful style. Now, he seemed to have a very, very particular sense of what was just enough without going overboard with it.
I think that he did. I think that part of it had to do with the fact that he had to be a little more careful than some of the other people. I know, he used to hang out, ride motorcycles and stuff with people like Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran and these guys who were more wild, wilder stage presentation and stuff than Rick. I think that Rick had to be careful because of the image of the show. And I think that Rick's dad had something to do with how far Rick could actually go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Rick's dad wanted to make sure that Rick maintained that wholesome image for the show and didn't want it to get too out of hand. And I think the fact that Ozzy had been a band leader and a real good singer and musician for so many years, helped incorporate that taste into Rick too. I mean, both of Rick's parents were musicians and into that, and very famous years and years before Rick came along, and I think a lot of that just seeped into Rick naturally too.
Yeah.
And I remember, Rick was one of the few. He and Elvis were, I guess, the only two big performers from that era that never were on American Bandstand. And Rick had told a story once about he was supposed to be on the show once, and he wanted to wear some really far out like satin suit or something, and Ozzy wouldn't let him wear it, because his dad thought it was a little not the kind of image that would have been good for the family show.
Yeah.
And apparently he and Rick and his dad had a big argument over that, and he wound up not going on the show at all, on American Bandstand at all, because of that. So I think that, Rick's dad, was basically in control of the show and wanted to keep that real wholesome family image, and I think Rick had to kind of watch himself. He might have been a little more flamboyant and wilder than he was, even, if it weren't for the show. And, I think he always had discussed, he and his brother both, the advantages and the disadvantages of that show. And I think the advantages certainly far outweighed the disadvantages of being on that show, but there were disadvantages to being on the show.
Let's pick up on that idea of a disadvantage. Elvis was is not only being the rock and roll king, but he was also a very sexual figure. Now, I've talked to female fans of Rick's who lose their cookies over Rick, obviously.
Right.
And I'll tell you something, when you and I get to be 45 years old, I hope to hell we both look as good as that man did.
I know.
But Rick was the nation's favorite kid brother. Do you think that wholesome image held him back from making the kind of later career transition that Elvis was still able to make until, of course, he bloated out and such? Do you think that image of the kid brother, as opposed to like a sexual figure, held him back a little bit?
Well, I think for one thing, Rick always was to some degree a sexual figure, even though he didn't have to move to do it. I think that his the way that he was, his kind of charisma,
Sure.
was kind of sexual in his way, and I think that there's probably a lot of women who would rather it be the way that Rick was as opposed to the way Elvis was.
Mm-hmm.
And they could probably, get into that more, I think that Rick was not really held back by anything, any more than Elvis or anything. I think that Rick did go on to the other things. I think that Rick was a pioneer of the country rock movement, maybe more so than anybody else.
Okay,
and he was very popular even besides Garden Party being a super big hit. Some of the songs surrounding Garden Parties were at least minor hits.
She Belongs to Me, etc.
Right, Easy to Be Free, and Life. Even if it was just on the easy listening charts, they were on the charts, and he was still doing television shows at that time. And his acting career, which we can't forget about that even, during the early 70s, he had really made a gigantic transformation of getting into a whole new image. He was playing rapists and murderers and pimps and
the guy with the flute on the streets of San Francisco. That's like one of the few that I saw, and it was like, this is Rick, man. I mean, he's
Well, there was one that was even, I think, better than that. There was an old show called Owen Marshall.
Yeah.
Which was like a lawyer show.
Sure, I remembered Arthur Hill.
Back around 71 or 72, where he played a rapist. I think it was a doctor who was a rapist. And I think he was nominated for an Emmy for that.
Wow.
I think he was nominated. Somebody did tell me that like a few years ago, and it was just a brilliant performance on his part. It was a great courtroom scene around the end of the show and stuff, you know. And it was at this time that Rick was really at his most creative, you know, musically, and he was writing a lot of songs, and he was really at this point where he wanted to prove that he should be taken seriously. As we're into an era at that time where 50s music was pretty looked down on anyway. It was like the kind of thing that your parents liked, or it was the kind of thing that if you were a musician, it was the kind of music that you played before you actually learned to play well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Before you got to be a real musician.
Yeah, when you got to play the songs that only had 3 chords,
right,
thank God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't taken seriously at all. And if Ricky Nelson, especially because of his image from the show and stuff, you know, he was really just kind of looked at as kind of an insignificant teen idol type of thing at that time. And so I think that he really was working real hard at that time to be accepted as a real significant performer, and he chose that country rock type of movement, you know. Randy Meisner was playing in Rick's band before he joined the Eagles, you know.
Yeah, I've got to ask you, do you have the soundtrack to On the Flip Side?
Yeah.
You do?
I do.
See, I thought I had you. I really thought I had you. I just picked that thing up for $20, and I thought I had everyone on that one.
I think I got it when it was new.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that sounds about right for you. You certainly know fascinating stories about him. I want you to talk then.
Well, there's a show you might not know about. Speaking of On the Flip Side, if you're getting into post Ozzy and Harriet era, there's a show called Malibu U that Rick hosted. It was a summer replacement series.
I had read about that, but I never saw it.
Yeah, and it was done like at Malibu Beach, and they'd have different guest stars every week, you know, from all walks of music. They'd have this is like 67.
Yeah.
And they'd have like the Doors on, or Marvin Gaye, and even people, you know, from before, like Bobby Rydell and stuff like that. And then Rick would sing once in a while, but he was basically just a host of the show. He didn't even sing too much on it, you know. But you know, he's still, you know, even during those years, he was still out there doing stuff, and he's still recording because he had that 20-year contract with MCA.
Yeah.
So you know, he had that luxury too. You know.
Let's talk about. Give me your opinion, an overall view, Rick's contribution to music. And I know that's for people like us, that's a hell of a vast question. But if you can encapsulate an overview of the highlights, the outstanding things that he meant to music, what would they be?
I think that Ricky Nelson might have, more than anybody else, done more to help popularize rock and roll than anybody else. Just because he was there every week for everybody from all walks of life to see doing it, you know, as to everybody else either heard it on the radio or you just didn't know about him. I'm sure a lot of people in those days didn't even know what Buddy Holly looked like or anything, you know, but Ricky Nelson was just there to see all the time. I think in terms of songs and musicians, he had his musicians probably more than, or at least as much as anybody else's musicians, influenced generations to come of musicians, because he had the greatest musicians. James Burton has to be either the first or second, probably most influential guitarist in the history of rock and roll, and maybe even country music, for that matter, since James came out of a country background too. What else was I going to say? In terms of songs, you know, he had some of the greatest rock and roll songwriters, Rockabilly songwriter Johnny and Dorsey Burnett, you know, writing for him. Baker Knight, who wrote things like Lonesome Town, Never Be Anyone Else But You. You know, they were like the cream of the crop of songwriters. Rick also pioneered the video movement. You know, Traveling Man was made a video out of already when it was new in 1961. And that was originally shown on Ozzy and Harriet, where they would have scenes from all over the world going on, from every city that Rick was singing about in the song, you know, going on while Rick was singing a song. It almost, you know, probably should be released now as a video. Maybe it gets somewhere on MTV or something.
Yeah.
You know, Stand By Me has come back again, you know. But, so in terms of music, I think song-wise, he made some of the greatest rockabilly records ever. Musician-wise, he has the best musicians ever, and style-wise, he had a style all his own that nobody else had, and I think that he influenced a heck of a lot more people than anybody could ever even imagine. You know, and I think his music has made a lot more impact than people could even imagine.
You know, the thing that's come very, very, very clear to me through all of the interviews that I've done, and I must confess, I love Rick. I lost touch for a while. Never out of heart. You know what I mean?
Right.
But certainly out of sight for a while. And I have not one half of the knowledge of the trivia and of the different insights that you have to it. But one of the things that's come real clear to me is for all musicians, big, small, guys playing in their garage somewhere or guys playing in Madison Square Garden for their own shows, I think we can find, and I want you to comment on this when I'm done stating the premise, is that I think we can find one hell of a lot to respect about a man who, through his special circumstances, started out at the very top of the music world, and then of course with the different changing attitudes and changing styles, really took a nosedive. I mean, we can be honest about that. He was really off the charts and everything else for years and years, but he was a guy that never stopped being a musician and a troubadour is what I mean. He always played. It's like in The Music Man, there's a line where Harold Hill said, "I always think there's a band, kid."
Right.
You know, comment on the fact that this man was, if nothing else, one of the most enduring troubadours of musical history.
Boy, you know, there probably isn't anybody more enduring. You know, it didn't matter if there was. I remember somebody telling me back around like '69, when She Belongs to Me was first coming out, maybe right before that, he played somewhere down here in Southern California. I don't know if it was in Long Beach or something, and it wasn't very well promoted, and there was something like 25 people there, you know. And he just went out and just played his heart out as if the place was full, and you know, he had said so many times in interviews, I love it, you know. And, you know, I mean, Rick certainly had to have the money to where he didn't have to go out over 200 days a year. And a lot of the places that Rick played, you know, I remember guys in the band telling me we'd do Rockabilly nights. The guys in Rick's band and myself almost every week that they weren't on the road, and they'd say, "See this place we're playing in?" I'd say, "Yeah." He goes, "We play places worse than this sometimes." And the thing was, is just as long as he was out there playing and there was people out there that still wanted to see him, you know, he just wanted to do it, you know, and he just loved the music, and he loved performing. And it's, you know, like he said, what else can I do? You know, I can't all of a sudden become a plumber. You know, this is what I do.
Yeah. I want to touch on the fact, you know, because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that is, as well as you being a musician who was very, very strongly influenced by him and being very knowledgeable about him and knowledgeable about the style of music that he did and that you do. I don't want to lose touch with the fact that you were also a fan and emotionally involved with his career and such. How did it feel as a fan for you to learn, first of all, to not hear Rick Nelson make a top 40 chart for, God, I think 7 years, and then to learn that Rick Nelson, our Rick Nelson, was playing places that seated 100 people?
You know, there was a time when all that was going on that I found myself taking up for Rick Nelson as if he were my brother. You know, this was when I was a kid living back east yet.
Yeah.
And it was that really bad time, not just for Rick, but for people like me who loved 50s music anyway, going through that late 60s era and stuff. People like Rick just were kind of laughed at, you know, and I was laughed at for wanting to do that music and liking people like that. And I felt real bad about it, you know, because I felt like, is something wrong with us? You know, I mean, is something wrong with me? You know, I mean, is it, am I really out of touch with what I'm supposed to be as a 15-year-old? You know,
Yeah.
I'm so far removed from what all these other kids are into. And I, I always felt bad, and I always found up getting in really heated discussions and stuff, and maybe it was a bad attitude on my part, but really knocking a lot of the modern stuff that was out then, and I still do.
Sure.
Being on a record company with a record label, Rollin' Rock in particular, or the little label I'm recording for now, and constantly having rejection, always, from the big labels, not wanting to put your stuff out. It's behind the times. It's too dated. Kids won't like this kind of stuff. And my knowing, or Rick knowing, or people who do this kind of music knowing that the public does like this stuff, and that the major labels don't like it, and they don't want the public to like it. They want synthesizers and drum machines and heavy metal guitar solos and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
And so to this day, I have a real bad feelings about the 60s and the 70s, and it's not to say that I guess a lot of good music did come out during those times, those decades, and people tell me that it's not fair of me to really knock the music that was out during that time. But one of the reasons that I do knock it is that they always knocked our kind of music.
Yeah.
They laughed at it. It was not to be taken seriously. And if you did like that kind of music, if you played it, if you listened to it, if you wanted to help popularize it at that time, you were like weird.
Yeah.
Because that you aren't supposed to like that kind of music. You're supposed to be into the drug music.
Yeah. we really have gone through. I don't know how we'd ever get along personally, but I can tell you in this regard, we have shared such common experiences. I mean, my very first record that I owned personally for myself, Mom took me and my two brothers out and said, you can each buy a 45. Well, my two brothers got together and they bought one 45, and it was Please Please Me by the Beatles.
Right.
And I got For You, and That's All She Wrote.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, I didn't want to hear the Beatles stuff, and I used to fight with my brothers about them playing that song over and over when I wanted to get For You on there.
Right.
And I don't think I owned anything but Rick Nelson albums until 1972 or something like that. Now, I've managed in my life to pick up on the influences of other artists. I like Billy Joel. I like a lot of jazz artists, and I like classical music a lot too.
Right.
But I've never gotten away, and I want to tell you, I have actually thrown out albums after they've gotten older. I can remember like the Association album that I had, the Association's Greatest Hits. I got tired of it, and I threw it out. I have never thrown out. I still have the single that I got, and I have never thrown out a Rick Nelson album. And it's been great through the years to sit down and visit with the old friends like Believe What You Say and Travelin' Man and Mary Lou. So I know how you feel as far as keeping that root influence.
Right.
Although I've gone into to some other kinds of music and stuff, I really have always kept that root influence. So I really shared a very common experience with you there. And the feelings that you expounded on about the feelings of rejection and such were things that I shared. I mean, I remember fighting with people about Rick Nelson and that. And I think for me, what really bothered me is during that British invasion era when the Beatles dominated, and I give a lot of respect to the Beatles because they did change the face of modern music.
Right.
But for me, what bugged me is anybody with a British accent could have a record, and could probably have at least one hit. I mean, we remember such outstanding musical acts as Freddie and the Dreamers, who I'm sure contributed in their own way. But while all that was going on, the entire industry and the world had turned their back on a guy who, in 5-6 years, had sold 35 million records. And all of a sudden, he was no good anymore, and that bothered me.
And the saddest part is that they didn't just turn their back on Rick Nelson. They turned their back on everybody who wasn't who was from the 50s
Sure.
or so. You know, the Everly stopped selling through the 60s. You know, even Elvis was not having the same success. And of course, all of his movies, I guess, you know, were not the best movies that he was making at that time either.
Yeah, the sense and the thing that I've heard about Rick Nelson is on a one-on-one conversation, Rick was uncomfortable as hell.
Right.
And Rick was not comfortable talking to audiences, and I even noticed that when I saw him live. But start the music, and Rick owned it.
Right.
You know, Rick owned it.
It's always funny because I had this girlfriend just about a week, I guess, before Rick died. I was scheduled to play with the Coasters one night, and our regular drummer couldn't do it for some reason. I was going to use Ricky Intveld, Rick's drummer, and Ricky was like excited about doing it because he wanted to play with the Coasters, and it was like just about 5 minutes from where he lived, so he could have his parents and everything come, and we were going to open for the Coasters and back them up. So Nelson was doing a show in Ontario this night, and I was supposed to go down there and show Ricky how to play the Coasters tunes, Ricky Intveld, the drummer. And we went, so anyway, my girlfriend and I, we went down, you know, to see Rick Nelson that night to the show. And I was sitting there with my girlfriend, and Rick would get ready to introduce a song, and I'd say, well, now he's going to say, this is a song I recorded when I was 16, just a couple years ago, you know. And then he'd say it. And then he'd say, like, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the show tonight. Thank everybody for coming to the show tonight. You know, and you could just see it coming, and she'd look at me and say this, did he always say the same thing? Like, I said, yeah, you know, for 10 years. You know,
you know,
but he got laughs every time, and no matter how many times you heard it, it was, he said it just like it was the first time he'd ever said it, you know. And
the comment that I read, you know, doing some of the research for the show, things that fans had brought into the studio here, so I could read them, and I sort of remember him saying this the night I saw him. But the greatest comment was during the Playing to Win tour, and he said, "I've got a new record out, and I'm telling you that because I'd like you to buy it."
Right.
I thought that was such a beautiful thing for a shy man to come out and make that statement, a very humorous statement, but nevertheless also very exact. Hey, I'm telling you this because I would like you to go buy the thing, you know, and let me do my thing.
Well, the thing is a lot of that style, I think, by a lot of big industry people or Las Vegas type of people or whatever, would be kind of looked down on as just kind of crude, unsophisticated, you know, maybe talentless or whatever. But for a lot of people, including myself, I think we like it better because the main thing about performers, no matter what kind of music or whatever it is the feeling and the human quality, the down-to-earth quality that, you know, that you can really relate to. And that's what I mean about Rick being the most unpretentious person that you could ever want to meet, you know. And he really was. I mean, he was just totally down-to-earth and totally human, you know, and I think that, you know, people can really relate to that end of it, you know.
It always impressed me about him in a certain way that here is a guy that, you know, again, fantastic career, television, movies, recordings, concerts all over the world, and yet he always looked like a guy that you would see playing at the local ground round. The guy that played beautifully, but did not really know how to manipulate the audience. And I think the beauty of Rick is that there was never an attempt to manipulate you. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was, this is me.
Although he had, I think, had a lot of attempts to manipulate him.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Not from record companies.
Yeah,
I think one good thing about Rick's manager, Greg, is that I think that Greg pretty much let Rick do what he wanted to do. You know, and I think, you know, again, I can't say for sure. I just was not that inside of the situation, you know. But just from the outside looking in, I think that Greg's feeling as a manager was that, you know, I'm going to let Rick do what he feels good about, and I'll try to help that work for him.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think that Greg tried to impose any strong feelings on his part onto Rick or anything like that. I think he wanted Rick to be comfortable, and I think that he went along with whatever Rick wanted to do, and he would try to make that work, you know.
Okay, we've talked about the nice guy and the all-American boy and all the rest, so I'm going to put on my cynical cap now. Because somebody's got to do this, and I'm going to go tabloid on you and National Enquirer and all the rest because I want your reaction to this. It's obvious because I've heard the people that weren't into Rick Nelson and all the rest, and it's quite obvious now that it's all come out that Rick Nelson was a drug abuser. Give me your reaction.
It's so weird. I had a hardcore reaction to this just about a week ago. I was playing in a little club called Little Nashville, which is a country music place. It's a hardcore country music place, and basic guys with beards and cowboy hats and all that kind of thing. And I was sitting at a table, and some guy comes up and back up, and he goes, I did like Hello Mary Lou, that set or something. He says, I really like the way you do those Ricky Nelson songs. He says, well, you sound a lot like him when you do Ricky Nelson songs. He goes, yeah, I hope that you don't act anything like him, though. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, Ricky Nelson was a drug addict. Because then you read all that stuff, and he was freebasing cocaine. It's his own fault that he got killed. He killed himself because he was freebasing cocaine on the plane. That's what caused the fire. And I just really said, whoa. That didn't happen. It's proven that it didn't happen. They know for sure that it was the heater that was broken on the plane. And, I think my feeling on it is that it's something I don't even really want to talk about because it's kind of like with Liberace, it's like, here's a guy that goes through his whole life being loved by so many people, was so talented and gave himself, to his fans and was a very nice person, a super talented person, and you go through your whole life and then you go and die, and it's like what image does Liberace have now? People think of Liberace as being gay and having AIDS. And that's what you go out with. And I just think that, with Rick, this is the boy next door for all those years, and he's just known for the Ricky Nelson image. And I think that if Rick did use drugs, I don't think that if he did, I'm not condoning it, but I think that it didn't affect anything.
Yeah.
Again, it didn't affect the way he was. It didn't affect the way he performed. It didn't affect the way he treated anybody else. He never did it around his children.
Well, and I don't want you to continue to struggle with something that's painful because I know it's painful. My reactions when I first heard those rumors were very, very obviously very emotional and negative reactions to that because I thought that was one terrible thing to do. And the reason that I asked for your reactions to it is because I want you to know that in the special, and I will tell you right up front, Greg McDonald, the first thing he said to me is, do me one favor. I want you to tell people what happened in that accident and then explain to me all of the findings of the, the final FAA, I guess, who did the report, which I still have to get a copy of so I can be exact on it. But included in this special is going to be the FAA findings of that accident because I want it on record once and for all.
Right. There's speculation it began because of the fact they found aerosol cans on an airplane. Well, when you're out on the road for 2 weeks straight, who isn't going to take hairspray and deodorant? Yeah. And the guitar players use something called finger ease, which is a thing you spray on the neck of the guitar to make the fingering a little easier and stuff. It's just incredible, that those things get blown out of proportion that way.
Well, we're gonna, and I know that Rick had done some drugs, okay, because I've had people not come out and tell me per se, but they've said things like, Rick was no saint, and he certainly wasn't above trying something once in a while. But they made a very good point. You're not a drug abuser, and look at 45 like Rick Nelson looked at 45, and people have volunteered to talk about that. I've never even asked them. Gordon Stoker of the Jordanaires, he said right out, we worked with people who had problems with drugs. And he said Rick Nelson never changed in mood, never changed in attitude, and
Exactly.
never changed in appearance.
Exactly.
Um,
Something that has not much to do with what we're talking about here. But it's kind of interesting, in the way people think about drugs. There was a talk show on here in L.A. about 2 years ago, and he had a doctor from UCLA who was an expert on cocaine, and he'd been researching cocaine for something like 14 years. He said, and he'd been talking for like 2 hours on cocaine, and the last question the interviewer asked him was, do you think cocaine should be legalized? He said, no, it's a deadly drug. He said, but think about this. He said, in the United States, there are around 52 million people there are around 24 million people who use cocaine to some degree. There are around 52 million people who use tobacco to some degree. He said, also in the United States, there's approximately 1 cocaine-related death per day. In the United States, there are approximately 1,000 tobacco-related deaths per day. He said, since there's 52 million to 24 million, there's slightly more than double the amount of people who use tobacco to some degree than who use cocaine to some degree. He said, so if tobacco were only equally deadly to cocaine, there should be slightly more than 2 tobacco-related deaths per day to 1 cocaine-related death per day. There's 1,000 tobacco-related deaths per day to the 1 cocaine-related death per day. He said that's something that people just don't realize and think about. And it's the kind of thing where people will condone cocaine or marijuana, which they should. They're deadly drugs. But then here's something else that is totally acceptable, and that so many people just do anywhere, in any bank or post office or Bob's Big Boy or wherever, that is killing hundreds of thousands more people even than the illegal thing.
Listen, I want to ask you what usually is my final question in the interview, and if something comes out of that, we'll roll with that for a few minutes. But I've asked this of everyone, and it's a very important part of my special. You knew and loved Rick Nelson, as did everybody on this show, I think, and you had a certain personal perspective with the way he touched you, the time that you did spend with him, his music, such. How would you like the world to remember Rick Nelson?
I think after all of my years of trying to make people aware of how significant and how good he was, I would probably, for once and for all, like him to be remembered as a very important and significant person in the history of rock and roll, not just an insignificant teen idol, that was there solely because of his looks and he was cute or whatever, but somebody who really knew and understood what he wanted, and what exactly he wanted it to sound like. He knew right down to exactly what he wanted that upright bass to sound like. He knew exactly the way the drums should sound for the kind of music that he was doing. Yeah. He knew exactly the type of slapback echo that should be on the guitar, right from the time he was a kid and right on up to the very end. He might have not known about what levers and knobs to push and pull in the studio, but, he knew what he liked and he knew what he wanted it to sound like, and he knew that if the guitar part sounded like a fuzz 60 style guitar, that wasn't right.
Yeah.
That, take that fuzz off and put echo on it and make it sound rockabilly, and, I think I would like him to be remembered in a class with guys like Elvis and Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis and Fats Domino and the Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly and Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran, because all of those people themselves would consider Rick one of them. I think Rick Nelson would have fit in on Sun Records, and I think there's just so many people in the public and also some of the press, rock critics or so, that were weaned on the 60s, that would not understand somebody saying that Rick Nelson was in a class with Sun Records people, but he really was. And if you're just going by remembering Ricky Boy Next Door from the Ozzie and Harriet show, then you're going to have that insignificant senile image. If you start listening to albums, you're going to be totally blown away and say, hey, I didn't know he did that kind of stuff.
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
Listen to songs like Shirley Lee on the second album,
yeah.
Ricky Nelson album.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, stuff
I grew
like
up
that.
listening to that one.
Hardcore, crude rockabilly, Sun Record style stuff. You know?
Yeah. I would agree with you totally as far as albums, and you know, since I've grown in different directions and listened to different people and such, like the Eagles and that sound, and coming to find an album called Intakes and putting that thing on. I mean, to tell you, I sat up on that one. I mean, I always knew he was a great rock and roller. I always knew that he had that very distinctive, wonderful sound like you hear on a Mary Lou or on a Fools Rush In or Traveling Man. I knew about that sound.
You know, it was really exciting, kind of, when I was a kid. I was about 15 or so. It was around that, like, 1971 era or so like that. And Rick had put out, like, Rudy the Fifth.
Yeah.
And this was at the height of, when FM radio was really getting big, like the alternative album rock station type of thing.
Yeah, sure.
At that time, and they were really into the really heavy rock type of thing, and, you know, they'd play anything that Top 40 radio didn't play. And I remember a couple stations back east, there was like an FM heavy rock station, an AM heavy rock station. They just played like The Who and Led Zeppelin and, you know, all the Hendrix, all the hardcore type of stuff. And when those albums came out, they started playing Rick's stuff. You know, and I remember, you know, one time they played Gypsy Pilot.
Yeah.
And after the song, they proceeded, right before that was The Who's, I don't remember the name of the song. But anyway, it come on after a Who song, and they played Gypsy Pilot, and then right after Gypsy Pilot was over, the DJ goes, whew. He goes, I don't care what his name is, that is really good rock and roll.
Huh.
You know? And I thought, wow, you know. And then there was another time when they played another song, I don't remember which one it was, off of one of those 70s albums, again, on one of these really, I guess at the time they were like hippie stations, you know, because the hippie thing was real big at that time. And they played some song, and the guy comes on afterward, and he goes, I didn't tell you who it was before the song came on, because I figured if I did, you might not listen to it, or you might change the station or so. Because I just wanted you to hear it first, and then tell you who it was, because it's so good that you're probably going to be surprised when I tell you who it is, you know?
Yeah.
And it was really kind of exciting for me that, you know, at least to some degree, Rick was being accepted then the way he wanted to be accepted, you know, by this whole different generation that normally would have looked down on him, you know?
Yeah,
his
really.
old image. You know, now he's I think they were still a little suspicious of him because he was still Ricky Nelson. But, you know, the stuff in those years when he was really starting to write a lot and stuff was just so good and so different from what you would expect him to do, and was so in touch with the kind of stuff that was going on at that time that they just really couldn't totally ignore it.
Yeah,
You know?
it's like I was saying, you know, with the time when Eagles and Linda Ronstadt and all the rest were in their heyday, and he came out with this fantastic album, Intakes, and then, you know, Windfall and such, and that stuff is as good as anything
That's for sure.
that was
as a
put
matter
out.
of fact, Linda Ronstadt once, in an interview, mentioned that it was really Rick's version of She Belongs to Me. She's like, I heard that song on the radio. She goes, I heard that steel guitar and stuff in it. And she said it was really that song, Rick Nelson's version of She Belonged to Me, that really wanted her to go in the direction that she wound up going into
God.
the 70s, that country-fied direction with the steel guitar and stuff
That's
like
the
that.
first time I heard that.
Yeah. So I
That's
think that was
wild.
like in a Rolling Stone interview they did with her, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, so it's been a while now.
You know, I've kept saying he had to have influenced that type of movement, because that man was there before it
Right.
happened. You know,
Right,
he
exactly.
was an innovator in that respect, and it's just the type of thing where he was Little Ricky. They weren't going to give him that kind of credit. There was almost this arrogance that his music be damned, we are not going to admit that he is that influential. And that's a damn shame. I mean, when it comes down to a PR job about a man's life, you know, we overlook a whole lot with Elvis, and at the same time, we overlook Rick. You know what I mean?
I think that if you look at some of the songwriters whose songs Rick chose to record way back already when he was a kid, you know, I don't want to knock, you know, totally knock like a lot of those teen idols at that time, you know, Frankie Avalon and Fabian and Bobby Rydell, but Rick did get lumped in with those guys a lot of the time. But if you look at the songwriters whose songs Rick chose, you're looking at people like, besides Johnny and Dorsey Burnett, you're looking at people like Johnny Cash, Nat Stuckey. You know, you talk about a hardcore hillbilly guy. Nat Stuckey,
Hank Williams.
Hank Williams, Willie Dixon, Fats Domino. You know, I mean, you're talking about hardcore, you know, really respected people. Roy Brown, Roy Orbison. You know, you're talking about Carl Perkins. You know, he recorded 2 Carl Perkins songs on his first album, on his Ricky album.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're talking about here hardcore respected people. You know, and it just, if anything, it goes to show what Rick's taste was. It wasn't insignificant teen idol stuff. It was hardcore,
and
respected music.
Not only that, I had read an interview with Rick that said his real early influences, there was a lot of jazz influences, and some of his stuff that doesn't hold up in terms of style. I mean, you know, I think that you can listen to Hello Mary Lou today, and that thing still kicks.
Right.
Some of the things that didn't hold up in style, like Baby Won't You Please Come Home.
Right.
Okay? There was a whole, you can hear the piano riffs in there. The whole style in that was a jazz influence, and here's this guy, this little teen idol, coming across with some very sophisticated ideas.
Hey, he sang those songs real well too, and some of those songs are not easy songs to sing. Some of those more like big band oriented type of things.
Yeah, I know. I sing some of them
around 60 and 61. Stars Fell in Alabama. And, you know, all those kind of tunes.
Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans?
Exactly.
And that one of the just I still get knocked out by Dinah. The very thought of you. I thought that was an incredible vocal performance, and it was so different for what he was known for. So you know, we certainly have that same idea about where Rick was in terms of that man really could do a wide variety of styles without it being not Rick Nelson anymore. You know what I mean?
You know, what's funny, you know, speaking about this whole other kind of music now, is that there's a guy here named Bobby Mizell, and he's a piano player. He played like on the original Chantilly Lace. He played on the piano on the Big Bopper stuff.
Wow.
And he plays here at a restaurant, a piano bar type of thing called Tam-O-Shanter. But he played on some of Rick's stuff that isn't out now, the new stuff that he had been recording. I think he did like 3 songs.
Yeah.
Because he can play any kind of music, but he's about 50 years old, but he loves the 50s stuff, rhythm and blues and rockabilly and all that kind of thing. And we've known him for a few years, and a couple of guys in Rick's band, you know, so let's get him to play on a few of these tunes. And so anyway, you know, lately, about 6 months or so now, I've been going over there on Wednesday nights. We've been doing a duo together. You know, he on piano, I might play guitar, and I sing some songs. And the nice thing about it is you basically get like a upper middle class, middle-aged type of clientele there anyway, is that, you know, we'll do like a lot of 50s tunes and stuff, but I can just kind of put my guitar down and I'll sing songs like That's All.
Yeah.
Or Again. You know, which is like, I think, an old Dinah Shore song that Rick did. And I had never had the chance to do those songs, you know, with having a band and playing all like rockabilly and country music all the time. You know, I just, you know, besides the songs are hard to play, you know,
they
musically.
They are.
So I still can't even do that. But still, it's been really fun and a challenge to sing those songs, you know, because they're up and down. You know, I mean, the range in it is so much more complicated than, you know, just basic 3-chord rock and roll kind of songs.
Yeah, I know That's All is one of my favorites to do when I'm backed by a combo. It's just a beautiful song.
You know, I mean, it's one thing to hear guys like Tony Bennett or Sinatra or so doing it, but when you think back to, wow, he did this when he was like 20 years old.
I'll never forget the first time I heard somebody else do the song Someday. And it was a woman that I really respect named Della Reese.
think it's like an old Mills Brothers tune.
Yeah, you know who Della Reese is?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Della is another influence in my life. She's just an incredible woman. I've had the opportunity to meet her several times and see several of her shows, and she had one hell of a version of "Someday." But I'll never forget the first time I heard it. I think her album was probably recorded before Rick recorded it.
Right.
And I stopped and I said, "My God, she's doing a Rick Nelson tune." It was wild because I couldn't conceive of anybody doing that. That was Rick's.
Well, there's a little trivia behind that song is that Rick played drums on that song and Ozzy played piano on it.
Oh, no kidding.
And what happened was they were in the studio one night, and I don't know, it was like getting real late or so, and a couple of the guys in the band left, and Rick and Ozzy were still there, and the engineer, and I guess a couple other players or so, a bass player and stuff, and they thought, well, maybe we can do one more song, let's do Someday. And anyway, they ran out in the parking lot to see if the other guys had left or not, and they did. They'd gone. The drummer was gone and stuff, and the piano player was gone. So Rick said, well, I'll play drums, and Ozzy played piano, and that's how they recorded it.
God, that's a wild story.
And Ozzy actually played a 4-string tenor guitar on Hello, Mary Lou. Wow. Also, which you can't really hear, but it's kind of in there. You kind of get the hint that it's there.
And Jimmy Haskell played cowbell. He was very proud of that.
I didn't know that he did.
Yeah.
Is that right?
He says, I played cowbell on Fools Rush In and Hello, Mary Lou.
Oh.
So he was really proud of that. Give me just a few mentions, if you will, because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that not only did we lose Rick, and obviously a couple nice people who were with him, his road manager and Helen. Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. We lost, as I understand it, four of the best musicians working in the business, and can you name them for me and just give me a little thumbnail, very quick sketch
Sure.
Of what they were about?
Well, I was close to two of them, so I can talk about them the best.
Mm-hmm.
The drummer, of course, I've been talking about Rick Intveld. I've been real close to Rick and his brother James and his family for several years. We've done lots of shows together and just a ton of shows together. And James and I still do gigs together every week. And we were real close. I look at James now as almost my brother. And he and I are real close and help each other out. He plays in my band sometimes. I play in his band sometimes, and he's doing real well himself. James, Ricky's brother, he's got a part in a series, a pilot that's coming up. He's an actor too. And his parents James and Ricky's parents have had me down for dinner and all kinds of stuff. And so that hurt a lot, besides the fact that, James and Ricky would hang out and stuff. And he was the youngest. He was just a kid. And there's actually a little story about this. Because the other guy I was going to talk about next was Pat Woodward, the bass player, who I was not as close to as Ricky, but, Patrick and Ricky and I worked together, again, almost every week doing Rockabilly nights. And Rick Nelson was doing a show here, I think it was in Long Beach or so, about 4 years ago. It was about 83 or something like that. And he wanted an upright bass in his band, He wanted that flat upright bass like he had on his old records, and like he used in the 50s, instead of an electric bass, because he wanted that sound. It's a slightly different sound. And somebody had said, and James Intveld, Ricky's brother, was going to open the show for Rick Nelson that night, because James has a Rockabilly band, and Ricky Intveld was his brother James' drummer. I hope this isn't getting too...
No, I've got you.
Okay. And James is like a couple years older than his brother. And so anyway, Pat, the bass player, was playing in James's band, and James used his brother Ricky on drums. And through Willie, Rick's cousin, James got this gig opening for Rick. Okay?
Yeah.
So Rick Nelson, he never would show up to see the opening act or anything like that. Rick basically got there when it was time to go on and do a show kind of thing. But anyway, somebody told him that, this band has an upright bass in it, you should check it out. So apparently Rick actually got there a little early and went up in a balcony or something, and watched, James's show.
Yeah.
And James had a hardcore rockabilly thing, and saw Patrick, playing upright bass, and that's when he snatched Patrick away from James.
Oh, okay.
And James, Patrick called James up, and and James was telling me all about this, and said, well, I have this opportunity to go with Rick Nelson, and it's like I'm getting older, his dad was like, he's 35 when he died, and he said, I got to, have a secure kind of thing here and stuff, it would be steady work and stuff.